What's up, guys? About to make y'all a video out here real quick. Got a question for you real quick. Any of y'all ever got your wiener stuck in your zipper? Well, I can tell you right now, it's not cool at all. We had about 10 minutes left in the tournament we fished on Sunday, and I had to piss like super bad. There were boats all around, so I was trying to be quick, and I went to zip it back up and thought it was in my boxers. Man, I got that shit so good. I screamed like a little girl. And then I was looking down and my skin is like between the zipper. So I had to pull the shit back down to get it off of me. God damn, talk about a terrible ending to a great day. Shit. But anyway, I wanted to talk about a topic that I've been getting asked a lot now that it's summertime, and the question is deep versus shallow. Like, when do you know to fish deep versus when do you know to fish shallow? And the answer is you really don't. So I'm going to tell you how I do it. Maybe it'll help you to figure it out for yourself, but you can see I'm fishing shallow now. So what happened is, I'll give you an example so you kind of understand what I mean when I say you really can't tell. So I came out Tuesday and Wednesday of last week, and both days I was catching them deep, like 16 foot. Off rock piles and deep wood and stuff like that. And so I had all intentions on, fishing a little bit shallow, but mostly deep Sunday for the tournament. And I came out Saturday for a couple hours. So Friday, it rained its ass off. It rained like, I don't know, it had to have been 2 inches. So what happens when it rains? Water muddies up. If it rains a lot, water muddies up. Rising water, so you got dirty rising water, right? Normally, well, not normally, sometimes it doesn't affect the fish at all. Like, sometimes they'll do what they're going to do anyway. You never know. You still have to experiment a little bit and figure out whether they're going to be shallow or deep. But Saturday I came out for a couple hours because I knew conditions were changing and I wanted to kind of get a feel for what was going on. So I spent 4 or 5 hours out here Saturday, and the water, like I said, was rising and muddy. Dirtier. It wasn't muddy, it was dirtier. So what I did was I just, started my day like I normally would, and I'll, hit a shallow place or two, and then I'll go out and hit a deep spot or 2, 3, 4, back and forth, right? Well, what I'd found is all those big ones that I was catching deep, I couldn't catch a big one deep. I was, not to say there wasn't any there, I'm sure there were some caught there, but I couldn't find them. And normally when I go out in the 14, 16, 18 foot and I'm catching a pound or 2 pounders, those big ones normally aren't out there. And I've only learned, I mean, that doesn't apply to every place, but for this lake in particular, it definitely applies. I would catch a couple 2 pounders on a drop shot, couple pounders, and I'm like, man, this isn't right. These are places where you usually catch, if you get a bite, you're going to catch a 4 or 5 pounder. So obviously something had changed. I said, well, let's check shallow. You can't rule it out, even though the water temperature is 84 degrees. You still can't rule it out. So what I did was went up shallow. First bite was a good one, like a 3.5. Second bite, 4.5. Third bite, 4. So we're like, the rising muddy water typically will push those bigger fish shallow. Now, I don't think that they're going to come from 16 foot necessarily to the bank, but some of these spots are so 16 foot to 5 foot is so, it's just one swing of the tail, it's not that far for them to go. So when the water comes up and then you have a lot of vegetation that you didn't have access to before, or that the fish have access to before, it brings a lot of the bait fish up shallow, so the fish will get up shallow too. Well, those big ones You know, the water rised at muddy water, and a lot of those bigger fish pushed up. So that was now, like I said, it doesn't always work out to your favor, but if you can find those big ones that push up, they're the right ones, and that's just exactly what happened. So I did still check a few deep spots. I was going back and forth from shallow to deep, but first bite was like a 2.5 pounder, which normally, you know, doesn't mean nothing. I caught that one, you know, in 2 to 3 foot. Then the next one, like 10 minutes later, I pull up to a spot that has deep water access, and Tyler, my partner, catches a 5.15 in like 3-4 foot of water. That particular spot had deep water access right next to it, so it was, you know, had shallow water access and deep water access, so you have to check both because you never know which one they're going to be on. And you know, like I said, the rising water, they pushed up in what grass was left that was still alive. Now, when you have when they spray the chemicals and kill the grass, the key for those fish is definitely to find grass that's still alive. And you can find some, it's just a little bit deeper than what they sprayed. Some of it's growing back now, but this stuff had stayed there. So that was the second one. Then 10 minutes later, I go to a similar area that's the same. Now I'm starting to put it together. I got 2 bites, you know, a decent one and a big one, that are both in, you know, 2 to 4 foot of water. So in my mind, the deep water bite, I'm not even concerned with it at this point, but I'll get to that part anyway. So then the next bite, I flipped to a shallow piece of wood, and it had to have been a foot of water. My line starts taking off, I jack it, it's a 5.85, all right? So now we got a 2.5, a 5.85, and a 5.15. So now the shallow water bite's, you know, good. I know it's good. So both of these areas were similar, so I just went to another one that was similar to those two, and caught a 3.5 pounder. Same thing, you know, 2, 3, 4 foot of water. Get that one in the boat. Now the shallow bite, about 10:30 or so, dies, okay? So 10:30, the shallow bite's dead. Now I'm gonna check my deep stuff because I know I got a 17 pounds or something like that for 4. I got to get rid of that 2.5. Shallow bite dies. What am I going to do? So I go searching all the deep spots. Well, same thing had happened. Those fish were still up there. I'd go out 16, 14, 12 foot, catch a pounder on a drop shot, 2 pounder on a drop shot. We tried to call twice and couldn't. Both ones, the 2.5 was heavier. But that's a lesson to learn when the water starts to rise up, is you got to adapt to your conditions, and it doesn't always work out to your favor, but when it does, you can catch good ones in a hurry. I mean, all 4 of those bites were within 20 minutes, 30 minutes of each other. You know, and then, like I said, I went searching deep and couldn't put it together. But so what I normally do, if you're asking, what do I fish, deep or shallow? Like I said, you don't actually know which one to fish. It doesn't matter if it's August, you know, and the water temperature's in the 90s. It doesn't matter. You have to figure out what those fish want to do in that particular day, or at least the bigger ones. I could care less about the stinkers, you know. You could come up in the pads and catch those year round. Those aren't the ones I'm looking for. So your bigger fish are typically going to make different movements than the smaller ones will. So every day, and so if I have 2 days in a row, like today's Tuesday, I just caught those Sunday. Today I've caught 5 shallow, pretty decent ones, so I'm still up shallow. But I did catch a good one in 16 a couple like an hour or 2 ago. So that tells me that water's starting to stabilize again, and they're starting to get comfortable and push back out again. At least some of the bigger ones are. So you got the water came up real fast, rising water, changing water conditions, muddy water, pushed them up shallow. Rising water, shallow, dropping water or falling water, deep. That's normally what I do. I mean, that's kind of textbook stuff of what you're supposed to do, but these fish don't, you know, bass don't play by rules. They play by whatever they want to play by. So I'll hit a lot. Now a lot of these areas, the best areas I feel like are areas that have, are areas that fish can live year round. Another example, when you have water coming in, like, you know, if it rains real hard and there's water coming in the backs of the creeks are a good place to be. It's got fresh, cool water. It's going to push a lot of bait in there, simply for the fact that there's like all those nutrients and the shit that come in from the back. So creeks is another option when the water starts coming up. It's all a chess game. You know, a lot of it's mental. You gotta, time on the water is so important because you get to see those things in different conditions. You know what happens in different conditions. And even though, you know, we won the tournament, I still had learned something that day. And I had learned that these fish don't play by the rules. So you got to kind of check them all, you know. Now the water, like I said, the water's starting to come back down. It's cleaning up a little bit, and the fish are starting to, you know, move again back to where they were going to. Now this year is a little bit different than other years, and every year is going to be different. Like, I'm catching them in places that I normally don't even fish in the summertime. But those areas you have to check. You know, you can't just write it off completely. So yeah, there is no solid answer to it. I had another question about the thermocline. You got to look back in my videos. I do have a video on the thermocline. I don't remember which one it's in, but it'll tell you how to find it. There's really not a good clear thermocline right now. It's not real visible, so I can't really see it right now. Early in the morning you'll be able to see it on your graph, but it's hard to see. But anyway, what was I gonna say? So yeah, you got rising and falling water. You got to check both. Whether you're gonna fish deep or shallow, you got to check both. And I was saying the best spots are those areas where they can live year round. So what that would be like a shallow underwater point that goes out with some rock out to deep water. Because then you got an area where the fish can feed shallow. You got an area where the fish can go deep in the summer or the winter. You know, and you got, you know, if there's bait there year round, there's no reason for them to leave. So those are going to be your best areas. And in those areas, you can slide. What I typically do is I'll start either shallow or deep and then work my way in whichever the opposite way is. So I'll start out on the tip of it, you know, and throw a crankbait or a drop shot or a jig, and then work my way to the mid depths using the same bait. And then once I get up to the grass or the pads and the rock, that's when I'll switch to a flipping bait or something like that. And once you get a couple bites, you'll be able to put it together. Because it's always going to be one or the other. It's very rare that it's both. In the fall and the spring is the exception to that rule. You can find both of them deep as far as big fish in both spots is what I meant by that. So you just gotta fish it and figure out which one it is. Like I said, I wish there was an easy answer to say once the water temperature is, you know, whatever it is, then you'll be able to just go deep and stay deep all year. That's not the case though. You know, different conditions call for different things. I've noticed when it's cloudy and raining, typically the fish are going to be a little bit shallower than they would if it were sunny and bluebird skies. You know, bluebird skies and no wind, they typically suspend a lot. So those are all things that you got to kind of keep in mind when you're bass fishing. I mean, there's a lot of things to remember, and that's the whole fun of it, is figuring out, you know, whether or not you put the pattern together. But So yeah, like I said, normally I'll do both. So if I were you guys, I would try to find areas that have both deep access and shallow access. Start there. You know, don't spend a whole lot of time. Just fish it how you need to from deep to shallow until you get a bite, and then go to the next one. And just try to pay attention to where you got that bite. Like, is it at the mouth of a creek? Your Sunday, every bite was at the mouth, pretty much at the mouth. You know, on an underwater point or something like that, which I was saying in my last video. But you typically, like I said, you wanna find those areas and then, you know, hit a couple of them until you get a bite in a certain depth. One depth doesn't mean shit. One bite doesn't mean shit to me. 2 bites don't mean shit to me. If I get 3 bites doing the same thing, then I know I'm doing the right thing. But again, conditions are going to change too, and you know, from morning to afternoon, you might not have the same pattern that you had in the morning. So if you're doing that and then you go an hour without a bite, or you go 2 hours without a bite, you might want to think about changing up. Now in that case, if I'm fishing shallow, for an example, if I'm fishing shallow and I have a good morning bite going on, but then, you know, say by, I don't know, 10, 11 o'clock, if I'm not getting a bite by 12, I'm gonna change it up and start looking out on those same areas, but out deeper. Because typically it's gonna change. You know, it's definitely gonna change. Sometimes it's hour to hour, sometimes it's day to day, sometimes it's week to week. So it's all part of putting together the puzzle, and that's what's fun about bass fishing is putting together that puzzle. Also, like I said, make sure you pay attention to details, because it is a pattern lake. So once you, and most lakes are pattern, the exception to that would be tidal water, because tidal water is just different all the way around. But you definitely want to pay attention to the things you're getting bit in. It's going to help tremendously. Like if it was at the mouth, was it pads and grass that you got bit in? Was it wood that you got bit on halfway back in the creek? Whatever it is, you know, start running that stuff. That's where knowing a lake can benefit you, because you know where to find all that stuff. So once you get, you know, a couple bites, then you know, all right, I got to run here, and then here, you know. So if you don't know those, you're going to have to find them. But that's the key to finding deep or shallow water success. And like I said, just have your repertoire of baits that you're going to use. Rotate through them depending on what depth that you're fishing. Find out whether those fish are shallow or deep, on top or on the bottom, and then you'll put yourself together a pattern, and it'll be a lot easier to figure out deep or shallow. And it's going to change day to day, so you got to pay attention. So the rotation that I use right now, that I was using Sunday, that I'm using now, is I'm flipping a creature bait right now with a 1/2 ounce weight. I got a deep diving crankbait, I got a top water, and I got a jig and a drop shot. If you can't catch them on one of those, there's something wrong. So they're gonna bite one of them, or all of them in some cases. So I hope that answered your guys' question, and hopefully it'll help you a little bit. I mean, it's kind of vague, but it's really an easy thing. You just have to learn how to do it, and then get comfortable doing it, and not second guess yourself, because like I said before, confidence is everything. So hopefully it'll help you guys catch a couple more fish, and some big ones. And then yeah, I want to hear about it. So I hope you all have a good week. Don't get your dick stuck in your zipper, and I'll try to talk to